Welcome to the deep dive. You know we love to explore those little linguistic quirks that make English so fascinating, right?
Right. It's those tiny details, those turns of phrase that really help you sound natural and understand different cultures. It's not just about grammar, it's about getting the feeling of how people really talk.
Exactly. And today we're going on a little linguistic road trip, visiting the US, the UK, and Australia. We'll be breaking down expressions, explaining them clearly and slowly, so it's perfect if you're learning English.
It's about capturing those nuances, those little things that make each culture's use of English unique.
First stop, the USA. And when you think of America, what's one of the first things that pops into your head?
Well, for me, it's got to be those wide open spaces, that sense of freedom, and cars.
Of course. Cars are practically part of the American DNA. It's historical, Henry Ford made cars affordable, and boom, suddenly everyone's hitting the open road.
And that's where you get this whole idea of the road trip. It's not just driving, it's an experience, an adventure, exploring America by car.
Like Route 66, right, that iconic highway. For many, it symbolizes that freedom, escaping the everyday and just seeing what's out there.
It really captures that American individualism, that desire to explore and discover.
And of course, you need the right vehicle for a proper road trip. And in the U.S., that often means an SUV. You see them everywhere. But what does SUV even stand for anyway?
SUV stands for Sports Utility Vehicle. They're popular because they're big, lots of space for people and stuff, and they can handle rougher roads, not just those perfectly smooth highways.
And speaking of cars, here's a quick tip for you English learners out there. In the U.S., you fill up your car with gas at a gas station, not petrol, like in some other places.
Small difference, but important. Can you imagine showing up at a gas station in America asking for petrol? You'd get some funny looks, I'm sure.
And then there's the drive-thru. Seriously, you can get almost anything through a drive-thru in America. Burgers, coffee, prescriptions, even banking.
It's fast, it's convenient, it's America. They like things quick and easy without leaving the comfort of their car.
So, taking a step back, what does all this car talk tell us about American culture then?
I think it reveals a lot about their values, Cars represent that freedom, that independence. It's that open road spirit, wanting to see what's out there. It's really deep in American culture.
And we can't forget those classic American cars, right? Those muscle cars, vintage models. There's real nostalgia there, a yearning for maybe a simpler time.
You're absolutely right. They represent a different era, a sense of power and style that still resonates. It's like owning a piece of history, a symbol of American ingenuity.
All right, enough about cars for now. Time to hop across the pond, see what linguistic gems we can dig up in the UK.
And as anyone who's ever set foot in Britain knows, there's one topic that's bound to come up in conversation. The weather.
You're telling me. It's practically a national obsession. Imagine you're waiting for the bus or standing in line at the supermarket. What's the most likely conversation starter? You guessed it, the weather.
It's not always about complaining, although there's plenty of that too. It's more that it's safe, neutral ground. A way to break the ice without getting too personal,
Very British, wouldn't you say? Polite, keeping things light.
Absolutely. British folks are known for being a bit reserved, hesitant to dive into personal stuff, especially with strangers. Weather is a perfect conversation starter. Everyone can relate.
So let's dive into some British weather vocabulary, shall we? First up, overcast. What does that actually mean? Paint us a picture.
Overcast basically means a gray, cloudy sky. Sadly, a common sight in the UK. It's that kind of day where you can't even tell where the sun is and the light's all dull and gloomy.
And then we got a bit nippy, which I've got to admit I find adorable.
It is charming, isn't it? It's very British, understated, not freezing cold, but there's a definite chill in the air.
And of course, we can't forget drizzle, that fine, misty rain that seems like a permanent resident in the British Isles.
Oh, the famous British drizzle. It's not a downpour, but it's enough to make you damp if you're caught without an umbrella, and it just lingers sometimes.
Then there's muggy. Not a fan favorite, that one. What exactly does muggy weather feel like?
Muggy is that hot, sticky kind of weather. It makes you feel sweaty and just uncomfortable, like the air is thick and heavy, you can barely breathe. Not uncommon in British summers, believe it or not.
One of my favorite British sayings.
Yeah.
4 seasons in one day.
A classic. It sums up British weather perfectly. You might wake up to sunshine, have rain at lunch, a windy afternoon, and who knows, maybe even hail before bed. You just never know.
It's like a weather roller coaster. But beyond the words, what does this weather obsession reveal about British culture?
It says a lot about their politeness and social rules. Weather talk is a way to make small talk without being too intrusive. It's safe, relatable, helps avoid those awkward silences.
Like a social code almost,
Right.
right? Showing you're friendly without being too forward.
Yeah.
And I love how Brits use weather metaphors to express how they feel. Like saying it's a bit grim out doesn't just mean the weather's bad.
Exactly. It's a subtle way to express a mood, a feeling of pessimism, without being too direct. Very characteristic of British communication. They're masters of understatement.
And the fact that they have so many words for rain, from drizzle to downpour it, shows how closely they observe it, live with it. It's part of their everyday life, part of their language.
It's like they've developed this deep respect for rain, acknowledging all its different forms. Quite fascinating, really.
All right, let's trade those umbrellas for some sunscreen, because we're heading down under. Australia, a land of sunshine, laid-back vibes, and of course, some truly unique slang.
Ah, Australia. Friendly people, beautiful beaches, and a sense of ease you can just feel. And it's all reflected in their language.
I'm always impressed by how Australians shorten words and phrases. They've turned efficiency into an art form, haven't they?
It's true. They're like, why use a long word when a short one will do? It creates this casual, friendly atmosphere, so typical of Australian culture.
And we'll be diving into all of that and more after a quick break.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we're getting into all those fun and sometimes baffling expressions that give English so much personality.
In part one, we cruised through American car culture, braved the British weather talk, and even got a taste of American sports slang.
But the beauty of English is its diversity.
Exactly.
So today, we're heading back down under to Australia.
Back to Australia,
Ah.
where the slang is as vibrant as the sunshine. I love how Australians have a knack for shortening words, making everything so efficient.
It's true. It's like they've taken that work smarter, not harder idea and applied it to language.
So let's get into it. What's a classic Aussie abbreviation our listeners should know?
How about brekkie for breakfast? It's just a fun, casual way to say it. You know, instead of that formal breakfast, it's just brekkie bright and early.
I love that. And then there's servo, short for service station. That's where you fill up your car with, wait for it, petrol.
That's right. In Australia, they say petrol, not gas, like in the U.S. It's a small difference, but hey, it matters if you're learning English.
Oh, it definitely
So
does.
you don't want to be stuck looking confused.
Now, while we're on the topic of cars, how would an Australian describe a flat tire?
They'd call it a flat tire, actually, using that British spelling of tire instead of the American tire. It's interesting how Australian English blends British and American English, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Like a linguistic fusion, a reflection of their history and all those cultural influences.
Exactly. It's a reminder that language is always evolving, borrowing from different places.
So let's get back to those abbreviations. We can't forget Barbie, short for barbecue, which is practically a national pastime in Australia.
Ah, yes, the Barbie. Just picture it. Sunny afternoon, friends and family gathered around the grill, flipping snags, sausages, and just soaking up that laid-back atmosphere. That's a classic Aussie Barbie.
Sounds idyllic. And of course, no Barbie would be complete without some sangha, short for sandwich.
Oh, of course. Gotta have those sangos.
So from brekkie to Barbie to sangha, it seems Australians have a real talent for making those short, snappy words that just sound so friendly.
It's like their language mirrors their lifestyle. Relaxed, informal, all about enjoying those simple pleasures.
And that relaxed vibe goes beyond abbreviations. Remember, mate, from our last segment, it's more than just a word. It's that symbol of equality, which is so strong in Australian culture.
It's like saying, we're all equals here, no need for formalities.
Right. And that sense of inclusiveness shows up in their greetings, too. How you going? It's not just a question. It's an invitation to connect, to be open and friendly.
It really is.
And even when saying goodbye, Australians manage to inject some warmth and humor into their farewells, like, hooroo! It's so cheerful and lighthearted.
It is. Like they're saying, see you later, mate. Hope to catch you again soon. Much different from a stiff, formal goodbye.
It's amazing how one word can reveal so much about a culture. Speaking of cultural values, let's talk about the importance of a fair go in Australia.
Ah, yes. The fair go. That concept's deeply ingrained in Australian thinking. It's about giving everyone a chance, treating people equally, making sure no one gets left behind.
It's about fairness, equality, looking after each other. And it's not just an idea, it shows up in their social policies, their everyday interactions.
Absolutely. Australians have a strong sense of social responsibility, a belief in creating a level playing field. It's a core value woven into their society.
It's fascinating how these values shape not just their language, but their whole way of life.
It reminds us that language isn't just about communication, it's a glimpse into a culture's heart, showing its history, values, and beliefs.
Now, before we say hooroo to Australia, we got to touch on one more aspect of their culture, their love of nature, the great outdoors.
Of course, Australia is famous for those breathtaking landscapes from the rugged outback to pristine beaches. It's a nature lover's paradise.
And that connection to nature, it's woven into their language, too. So many expressions relate to the outdoors.
For instance, they often use the term bush to refer to those wild, undeveloped areas. It's like saying the wilderness or the backcountry.
And then there's the outback, that vast, remote interior of Australia. It evokes those images of red dirt, scorching sun, and adventure.
The outback's a place of extremes, both beautiful and unforgiving. It symbolizes Australia's tough spirit, their connection to the land.
And speaking of iconic Aussie creatures, we can't forget about roos, short for kangaroos, of course.
Oh, roos. Those are practically synonymous with Australia. Amazing creatures, hopping incredible distances. You'll spot them grazing in fields, even venturing into the suburbs sometimes.
Well, what about those adorable koalas, always up in the eucalyptus trees?
Koalas. They're a national treasure, known for their sleepy vibe and their love of eucalyptus leaves.
It's incredible how these animals have become so central to Australian culture and language.
It speaks to the power of nature, how it inspires us and shapes our lives. Australians have this deep respect for their environment, and it's right there in their everyday speech.
Well, it looks like our time down under has come to an end. For now, at least.
It's been a blast exploring the linguistic landscape of Australia with its unique blend of slang, abbreviations, and all those nature-inspired expressions.
But our linguistic adventure isn't over yet. There's one more stop on our global tour, and it's going to be a real mind-bender. Get ready for part 3 of the deep dive, where we'll be tackling the mysteries of rhyming slang. That's a linguistic phenomenon that can leave even native English speakers scratching their heads. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have, from American car lingo to British weather talk, and of course all those Aussie abbreviations. It's been a real linguistic adventure.
It has. We've seen how language reflects culture, how those little quirks and expressions reveal so much about a place and its people.
Exactly. And today we're taking on a linguistic challenge that's sure to twist your tongue. The world of rhyming slang.
Rhyming slang. It's like a secret code. A way of speaking in riddles that can leave even native English speakers scratching their heads.
You're telling me. You replace a word with a 2-word phrase that rhymes with it. It might sound complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it's incredibly fun. It adds a whole new layer of playfulness to the language.
It really does. So where did this rhyming slang come from? Spill the tea, or should I say spill the Rosie Lee?
Ah, good one. Well, the history's a bit murky, but most folks believe it originated in 19th century London, maybe among those working-class communities in the East End.
Some say it was a way to communicate in secret, confusing outsiders or maybe even outsmarting the authorities.
Whatever the reason, it's become a beloved and enduring part of English, you know?
So how does it actually work? Give us an example. Break it down for us.
Okay, let's take the classic apples and pears, which is rhyming slang for stairs.
So instead of saying, I'm going up the stairs, you'd say, I'm going up the apples and pears.
Precisely. Might sound odd at first, but trust me, you get used to it.
It's like a game. And the coolest part is, rhyming slang is always evolving. New phrases pop up all the time.
You got it. It's alive, it's creative, it reflects that humor that's so ingrained in language.
So is rhyming slang just a relic of the past, or do people actually use it today?
While it's not as widespread as it once was, it's still alive and kicking, especially in certain areas and communities.
You might hear it down at the pub, on the streets, even in movies and songs.
Absolutely. It's a way for people to connect with their roots, add some local flavor to their speech, and let's be honest, it's just fun.
And it's hopped across the pond too, right? You hear rhyming slang in Australia, New Zealand, even parts of the U.S.
It's true. Language travels, it adapts, it connects people in unexpected ways.
Okay, hit us with some more rhyming slang examples our listeners might encounter in the wild.
All right, how about this? If you hear someone talking about their trouble and strife, they're actually talking about their wife.
Trouble and strife for wife. I love that. So descriptive. What else you got?
If someone's heading to the Dog and Bone, they're not visiting a pet shop, they're making a phone call.
Dog and bone for phone. Brilliant.
Perfect.
Okay, give us one more one that's really out there.
Right, imagine you're feeling peckish. You might fancy a bite of the frog and toad, which of course stands for food on the road.
Frog and toad for food on the road. I can see how rhyming slang would make ordering takeout a lot more entertaining.
Exactly. It's about having fun with language, being creative.
So, any tips for mastering this rhyming slang? Is there a secret formula?
The best way is to immerse yourself in the culture, listen to how people speak, pay attention to the context.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's all about playing with the language.
That's the spirit. Remember, language is a living thing, constantly changing and adapting. Rhyming slang is just one example of that creativity.
And with that, we wrap up our deep dive into cultural curiosities in the English language. From American cars to British weather, Aussie slang, and of course that mind-boggling world of rhyming slang, we've explored how language reflects who we are, where we come from, and how we see the world.
It's been quite a journey. And remember, folks, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep discovering those linguistic gems that make English so vibrant and diverse.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Until next time, happy language learning.